so that we close in. Budget, we are now in the budget making process in Kenya as we talk. In fact, the National Treasury just tabled the supplementary estimates 2 and the main budget for financial year 24-25. So let me talk about 24-25, because I would request, just Honorable Kehongi said, that we get, the more voices the better. The more Kenya becomes more open to many voices the better, and especially very considered opinions like of the people in this hall. No, now our budget policy statement, we had made ceilings to a tune of 4.1 trillion Kenya shillings. But in the estimates, we have revised that downwards. And our current budget that we are making is around 3.93 trillion Kenya shillings. 3.913 actually. And I want to go slowly here because this is our domain, people here. So 3.9 something, so we have climbed down. Even if I'm not very exact, it's because budget making process, you only become certain about figures when it is already approved by Parliament. But these are tentative figures which have been submitted by the National Treasury. Out of that, the revenue side of our budget, ordinary revenue that we anticipate to collect, as you know, budgets are projections. It's never certain, including household budgets. So 2.9 trillion ordinary revenue. A that we project to collect 441 billion Kenya shillings. A, you know what A is. Those who are in parastatals that collect money and you spend at source, that is A. The money you pay in a hospital, which is government, it becomes revenue for government, it's A. The money you pay for passports, that becomes revenue for government, is not part of ordinary revenue, but is A. That's 441 billion Kenya shillings. Grants will be around 51 billion. Now, I am proud about the other figure I'm to give. I'm very proud about it. If you look at our budget policy statement, we had projected to have a deficit of 703 to 720 thereabout billion, depending on which budget, the one submitted or the one that we ended up approving in terms of budget policy statement. Currently, we have revised that downwards, that our deficit in Kenya is only 5.14, is only 514 billion Kenya shillings. I'll highlight what that means and why I'm excited. Let me go to the revenues, to the expenditure side. And I bear that you become keen. You see clearly as economists where we must point our eyes. Our recurrent national government expenditure, recurrent in national government alone, is 1.6 trillion. Recurrent of national expenditure alone. Sijaweka governors. Recurrent national expenditure. Out of that, around half of that, is PE, personal emoluments. Salaries, in other words. Development in the current budget we are making, 730 billion. You already see now why I'm reading these figures. Development, 730 billion Kenya shillings. Monies to counties, shareable revenue, 391 billion. It is still contested. Governors are already also negotiating and will come to a conclusion, but tentatively now, we are dealing with 391 billion Kenya shillings. CFS, Consolidated Fund Services, 1.2 trillion. Can you just look at those figures as an economist before I proceed? Because I can see you writing. Just look at them. And especially look at what I've read in terms of the economy as an aggregation of households. And you are the household. And look at that budget in a household setup. Just look at those figures, because they form part of the biggest basis of government policy, and especially economic-wise. So, look at the expenditure side. 1.6 trillion Kenya shillings recurrent. 730 billion development. Forget about the counties. CFS, 1.213 trillion. What is CFS? What is this thing we are calling CFS? It is 1.08 trillion going into payments of interest rates for the public debt. 1.08 trillion is going into the payments, not of principal, of interest rates, both domestic and external. Domestic, Kenyans will be pocketing over 750 billion Kenya shillings in interest paid by government. Domestic debt. So the other one part of CFS is pensions, which is, they form part of the first charge in budget making process, but also in release of exchequer. So when I'm doing the budget, the things I don't negotiate. First of all, I put CFS where it should be. Whether it comes rationalization, you don't touch. So you only touch what? Development. When you are rationalizing the budget, the sacrosanct number one, you can't touch CFS, because you have to pay your obligations and you have to pay pensions. The second thing that then we put safe is PE, salaries for the civil servants, because you can't start negotiating at economy haifanyi mzuri, ugoje kidogo. What becomes the casualty when you hear there is a fiscal consolidation? The casualty number one all the time is domestic development budget. All the time. Just look for the entire existence of budget making process in Kenya. So that aside, I know you have made some sense of these figures. Now, on the revenue side, I talked about deficit of 514. The reason I am excited, when we came in less than 2 years ago, if you look at the then budget, the deficit to GDP ratio in Kenya was around over 7%. 7%. In the budget policy statement, we estimated it at around 3.9% when it was over 700 billion. Now we are making a budget that Kenya has not seen for the last 15 years, where our deficit as a measure of GDP will only be 2.9%. Please clap for me. Lakini ya kuitisha ni balaa. So, and not me, of course, it is the entire everyone, all Kenyans together, because when you hear the deficit is down, something will pay for it. And that something will be development, definitely. Now, I don't know whether I'm making sense with all these jargons, because I could be talking to myself, because I think I'm too technical. Tuko sawa? Okay.